Okay, so hi everyone. Today is the third call for the Beginner's Guide to ReFi. Today's call is called Doing DAOs, but Antonio is on his way from Portugal to Germany right now to go to a really important event called Regen Unite, where he's going to be talking about the work we're doing for ReFi Barichara and what we're doing with the Gitcoin grant. And he asked me yesterday if I could take over the call today because he needed to be on a train between countries and wouldn't have internet connection during the time of the call. And we actually felt anyway that what we're doing with Gitcoin right now is so deeply connected to what he was hoping that we would achieve in this topic that he actually thought that it might be better for me to just host this call anyway. And so what I want to talk with you all about during the call is, in a sense, I'd love to just have a discussion about what you've been learning during the course in the last 2 weeks and what you've been learning from our Gitcoin experiment in the last week, because in my mind, they're deeply related, what we're doing. And also, when we talk about decentralized autonomous organizations, I actually have a lens or a mental frame for what those are, that I would say, if we understand what I mean by a decentralized autonomous organization, all the technological questions that make it confusing will just dissolve. Which is, I think people get confused about what is decentralized government or decentralized governance using something like blockchain, which I think confuses the hell out of most people. And what would it mean to just take those 3 words and apply them to any human culture? What is a decentralized autonomous organization? And I want to give you an example of a DAO that you wouldn't normally think of because of the crypto world, which is, what is an ant colony? See, an ant colony doesn't sound like it has much to do with blockchain, does it? Because it doesn't use blockchain. But what is an ant colony? An ant colony is a decentralized social model of organization for tens of thousands up to tens of millions of ants. It's autonomous in that there is an emergent collective intelligence of the ant colony, and it's clearly an organization, right? It's ant colonies are very highly organized. And so even without knowing all the details about chemotaxis and gene expression and phenotypes for how a bunch of ants can form different body types and different social roles and use chemical signals to spread out across their landscape, even without knowing all those details, you already know that, why are we not charging? There we go, something's wrong with the computer. We already know that an ant colony is a decentralized autonomous organization, right? You look at leafcutter ants and there could be tens of millions of ants in a single colony with decentralized, they're spread out all over their ecosystem. They're autonomous because they function differently from the ant colony that's 100 meters away, and they are very, very organized. So here's another example of a decentralized autonomous organization. There are more than 20 active groups in Earth Regenerators. They're clearly decentralized, right? Each of them manages itself. They are autonomous. The book club does not have to ask Joe's Learning Journeys, which does not have to ask Bioregional Catalysts. And even within Bioregional Catalysts, one pod does not have to ask another pod. And they're clearly organized, right? They're organized in some way. So Earth Regenerators is a DAO, just like an ant colony is a DAO without any blockchain. I wanted to say this because most of the confusion about decentralized autonomous organizations comes about because we think we have to figure out how cryptocurrency and blockchain relates to governance. And we get all confused because the crypto world's really damn confusing. But if you just take the idea of what a DAO is, you're like, oh, I get it. It's an ant colony. Oh, I get it. It's some decentralized way of governing, like what we do in Earth Regenerators. And so I think this is super important because when we conceptualize it this way, we say, well, can anyone create a DAO for us to use? It's like, Earth Regenerators is one. And you who are confused about DAOs helped create it by doing pro-social commons-based governance. So I just want to name that so it can start to dissolve some of this confusion. Muchas gracias, que tienes buen día. Nos vemos por la próxima. And so now what I want to talk about is a real DAO that we're creating in the last 7 days. We will continue creating for the next 7, which is using the 2-week funding round of Gitcoin to create a new DAO, a new version of decentralized autonomous organization. So I just want to ask Stephen, do you want to share something before I do that, or should I jump to the next step? Oh, you're muted.
I'm just so excited. I want to share. I think that it would help the context a little more to understand that, yes, there are distributed organizations already. Earth Regenerators is a particularly successful one. The term DAO came out of the blockchain community as a way to codify with rules. Antonio would talk more about the smart contracts. You've heard this term, but basically you make the rules, your bylaws are all in code, and then your actions are matched against this code. And then the theory is you eliminate a lot of disruption in the community, a lot of disagreement, because the rules are automatically enforced by the code. And that has its own issues. But when people talk about DAOs, they're usually talking about removing a lot of ambiguity by producing things in code and just making it like, we don't have to fight over this. We just, go back to the code. It also includes things like voting methods, which is what Joe's going to point to more towards what we're doing with or I assume you're going to point more towards what we're doing with the Gitcoin. But the thing to keep in mind is when most people in the blockchain or crypto community refer to DAOs, they're referring to stuff where a lot of governance is automated by these things they call smart contracts.
Thank you for that, Stephen. And I want to just follow on what Stephen just said. What happens when you have a contract or a piece of software that makes decisions? Why would you do that? One reason you would do that is you want to shape the architecture for how decisions are made, which is where I'm going to talk about the quadratic funding of Gitcoin as an example of this. And because we're going to talk about Gitcoin in a moment. And the other is so that the system has trust when humans don't. Because one of the key ideas behind markets, one of the most important ideas that Adam Smith talked about 300 years ago, was that sometimes when a market is structured well, the market creates an intelligence that individuals are incapable of. So when I talked about the ant colony has distributed search to find food, distributed transport, which is evolving and changing continuously, and the ants themselves do not know the best route, but they aggregate the best route by having rules of interaction or behavioral heuristics. And so what Adam Smith found was that the way you structure the interactions in the market either makes the market a collective intelligence or a collective stupidity. And so part of that is to remove the need for people to make good decisions because the system is designed in its architecture to make good decisions. And there's a place for that, just like the ant colony. So now let's talk about Gitcoin. Because what's happening with Gitcoin is this. We are evolving a DAO. We're 1 week in. Gitcoin has had 14 previous funding rounds to build the infrastructure for us to play within, and we are playing within it. And I want to share with you which parts are like what Stephen said, that would be like smart contracts, and which parts are like Earth Regenerators. First, the part that's like smart contracts. In order to participate in Gitcoin, you have to submit a grant and have it reviewed and approved before a funding round occurs, and it has to be applied to a specific funding round. So you've already entered into a set of agreements. One of those agreements that's really positive is the agreement to receive matching funds from quadratic funding. This is kind of amazing because what this says is this. We want to have a bias in decision-making that says the projects that begin receiving funds are biased toward a larger number of small donors rather than a small number of large donors. And we all agree to that because we all agree to receive matching funds from quadratic funding. And that's a smart contract. But the way that that smart contract works is it actually biases the whole system toward those who are successful early will accumulate more success later. And that's part of the smart contract of quadratic funding. And notice that a computer algorithm, a mathematical formula, is doing that part. See, I have no say in how Gitcoin does that, but I have say in how I play the game after having agreed to play that game. This is sort of like agreeing to play the game of Monopoly versus agreeing to play the game of parachute, where you all take a parachute and stand around it and you hold it and try and make it as high as you can. One is an extreme competition game with a single winner. The other is an extreme cooperation game where everyone wins. And so I am going to agree to the smart contract of quadratic matching funds, and then I can play a competition game or a cooperation game. So what this says is the Gitcoin funding round enables me as a player, as a grant within it, to explore different strategies to win the game, where I can even define what winning the game means according to different things. But I'm required to play it according to a set of contracts I made that allow me to play the game the way that Gitcoin structured it. So there's a blending of both. So this is really important. If it was simply that Earth Regenerators is good at pro-social, therefore we win, we would fail to understand that we're actually playing a game that has an architecture built in. And we've agreed to play the game of that architecture. Now I want to tell you what we're creating as a DAO. So on September 12th, after Tyler's write-up of our grant was approved a few days before, we were able to start receiving contributions from people who have MetaMask wallets, who have cryptocurrency of some kind, who have a GitHub account, who are already on Gitcoin and know how to use it. And by the way, those are big question marks because none of that is straightforward to do. It's a usability mess to set up a Gitcoin project and be funded. It's a mess to put money on a digital wallet. It's a mess to use the checkout, the shopping cart of Gitcoin. It's a mess, as Gail learned earlier this year, to write a Gitcoin grant and not have the system delete it with no customer supports, right? And so we had to navigate that whole mess. But what did we do by navigating that whole mess? We entered a game where we could show a different way of cooperating. So the very first thing I did was I asked people to support Gitcoin who are coming to ReFi Barichara and who I know have other Gitcoin grants. So I didn't go and ask my friends in Earth Regenerators, because most of them don't know how to do this. I was like, Chad might know, because I know Chad works with crypto. Tyler might know, because I know he works with crypto. Guy might know, because I know he works with crypto. Gail tried to do this. It was a mess. She doesn't know how. So what I did was, because we're already doing ReFi Barichara, I went to the ReFi Barichara Telegram group and asked people to donate money. I went to a weekly call on Wednesdays called Working Lands, led by a guy named Will at Horseshoe Capital, who's connected to Basin DAO, who's connected to the Regenerative Community Land Trust. By the way, if you don't know what these are other projects in that list of 11 that we're funding. And a third one, Common Action, with this woman named Ellie. Those are 3 projects. Wait, there's Sev, who does Eco Labs. There's Will, who has Horseshoe Capital. There's Alex, who has Regen Community Land Trust. And there's Timo, who's part of Basin DAO. They all know each other. These are 4 amazing landscape scale regenerative projects, communities trying to do great work. How do I know this? Because I know them personally. How do they know about me? Because all of them are considering coming to ReFi Barichara. So I asked them to donate to our project. And then someone came along who wanted to create a Barichara pledge of $1,000. And I asked them to do it in Ethereum on Gitcoin so that we could use the money to forward feed, to train people, to set up MetaMask, to set up GitHub, and then give them money, because it turns out it's hard to put money on a digital wallet. There are several broken points for people to do this. And then I asked people to fund these 11 other projects who are all clustering around what we're doing at ReFi Barichara, which is we're clustering around how to create landscape scale bioregional projects. I know this not because of what they wrote in their grant projects on Gitcoin. I know this because I talked to them personally and I know what they're trying to do. And so this is where we're creating a DAO. We're using the existing smart contracts of quadratic funding and the fact that you need a MetaMask wallet and the fact you have to use crypto and the fact that GitHub and Gitcoin are a usability nightmare to figure out how to get people into the system and play the game of the Gitcoin funding round. That's decentralized organization. It's decentralized because there's no central place where you can say, here are 1,000 MetaMask wallets that you could recruit to game and cheat the Gitcoin funding round. You actually have to have human relationships and human organization to build the capacity at all. And now that we're 1 weekend at about $13,000 in matching at the moment, and we are in absolute breakout, where a week from now we could have 50,000 or 100,000 of the 350,000. We don't know, but we are playing a perfect game right now. And not only are we funding our own project, we're funding a dozen others. Because this accumulation of funding support and accumulation of matching share of matching funds is going to every other project that receives donations from the people we're training. We're building a collaborative alliance, which, by the way, is a decentralized autonomous organization that's 1 week old. And really, it's only visible since Sunday. And by a week from now, if we play this game well enough and we fund enough of these projects together, and most of these people are coming physically to Barichara in 2 weeks to spend a week collaboratively designing exactly these systems we're funding, then between now and the next Gitcoin round, we can actually build a framework of collaboration, which is a decentralized autonomous organization, to play the Gitcoin round again and everything else we're all doing. Now, I just want to ask for two of you here, for Guy and Chad, who have worked in the crypto space in various ways, is what I'm describing like a DAO? And how is it different? Just want to know from your perspective, because both of you have experience with this. Guy or Chad, either of you would like to share?
Yeah, I would say it is a DAO. You're right. But there's many kinds of DAOs. So there's DAOs that are very, very governed by the smart contracts, as Stephen says, like an investment DAO. Like the people won't know each other. It'll just be like, we want to do this thing. Like, for example, last year there was a Constitution DAO. So they wanted to buy the original copy of the Constitution from the United States. And they said, so there was an auction. So they said, we want to buy this, this Constitution. They raised $40 million in about a week, I think. So that really caught people's attention. But there was no governance whatsoever. It was just like a sort of crowdfunding thing. Just get together and buy this thing. And then they didn't even know what they were going to do with it. And in fact, it turned into a complete shit show because they failed to buy it. Even though they raised $40 million, some billionaire bought it with his own money. And then they were left with all this money that they didn't know what to do with. So then they had to try and start the governance after they got all the money. And it didn't work out because it wasn't at all pro-social. Anyway, they gave all the money back and it was okay in the end. But yeah, other DAOs are basically like people who have been working together. There's one called Dada Art, which is artists working together, and they all know each other. There's like hundreds of people, but they've been working together for decades, and they just turned it into a DAO. So you can do it either way. I mean, obviously, the more people know each other, the easier it is to do the actual governance. But then if it's simply a matter of we're going to invest in NFTs, the only governance you need is which NFTs do we buy? And it depends, like if you're buying NFTs because you like the art, that's one thing, but they're probably buying them because they want to get the maximum return on investment. And so it's just simply a question of which NFTs can we buy and then flip immediately to make as much money as possible. You know, that is almost algorithmic, or that probably needs some human input. So yeah, it runs. I mean, DAO is really the original DAO. The first ever DAO that was called a DAO was just for investing, and then that got hacked, and all the money got stolen. So that was that was its own story. I mean, in fact, I was in a DAO in like 2014, but we called it a digital cooperative. We were trying to scale like a cooperative we had in real life where everyone knew each other. We were trying to scale that into an online thing using a cryptocurrency. So that there's actually a lot of overlap between DAOs and cooperatives. So you can also do it like that. So it is a kind of spectrum with the amount of governance necessary, going from basically zero, and it's all algorithmic, to a lot of human interaction. Everyone knows each other, and it's all worked out in chats and in Zoom calls and people meeting each other face to face. And then that finally just gets put on the blockchain when that's all been decided. So yeah, there's a various range of things. I would say what's going on here is definitely a DAO. Yeah, for sure.
Guy, thank you for those examples. I think those are really helpful. And I just saw the look on Gail's face as you were thinking. You're like, there are going to be some good questions coming in a minute. But Chad, on to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I'd also add the example of Redemption DAO. So Redemption DAO was inspired by Constitution DAO, and it was created a couple of months ago after the government of the Congo announced that it would make available the sale of tracts of rainforest to oil and gas exploration and extraction. And the global community got wind of this and spreaded the idea of creating a redemption DAO, so sort of like the Constitution DAO, to gather money across international borders to consolidate in the purchase of not a constitution, but land rights in this case. So there's a history of that there. And so, like I was saying, on one end, there's the algorithmic, focused DAOs where there's little social interaction. But then I think as DAOs have evolved, the need for governance and social interaction has become more prominent, and particularly when we're doing something like we're doing here, or in the case of Redemption DAO. So that was created very quickly. And because of that, because at the time they thought that they only had weeks or days in order to get the bid in. It turns out there was a longer time period to get the bid in. But initially they thought there'd be only a short amount of time, so it was very rushed. And what the rush part meant, there were sort of collapses of governance within the community, and also because this was also focused on preserving land and for the benefit of people in the community, contacts with people on the ground in the country. So I think what we're doing here is sort of exemplifying sort of a cutting edge in both regards, how to form a community, but also to do so with contacts on the ground. So.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chad. Are there any questions at this point or additional comments? Are there too many questions, Gail?
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm sitting here going, $44 million to buy the Constitution. Do you know what we want Earth Conservation to do with 44? I mean, even $1 million, forget 44. I mean, how in the world? I mean, Laura Kim and I know nothing about this. I mean, I've just dipped the toe in. How do we make people like that see that they could really have an impact on the world if they would support projects like ours rather than something silly like that? I mean, that's so silly. They're trying to make a point. It's insane. How is that different than paying a football player $44 million? It's not. It's silly. You know, give it to the people who are really trying to make an impact on the world. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's like, how do we get that message to these people?
I think the message is getting there. I mean, $13,000 to Barichara Regeneration Fund in a week.
Yeah.
It's getting there.
But what about those of us, and there are so many of us, who don't know how to do this?
Well, this is exactly what we were talking about, Gail. This is exactly what we were talking about yesterday on the call that Stephen was a part of. which is, where we had this call where it's like, would anyone like to learn how to set up a MetaMask wallet and donate to our campaign? And 0 people who were going to do that showed up. But instead, Guy and Steven and Penny and this other guy named Justin who works with Tyler and Kath, they all showed up. And we had this really amazing conversation about exactly your question, as it turns out, because what we talked about was the Gitcoin happens every 3 months. And so if we're training people to set up a MetaMask wallet and set up a GitHub account and be able to contribute to these campaigns while also forming an alliance of projects, we have 2.5 months to train people on how to do this. And one thought that I had, this is, I mean, I'm like firecrackers. I had so many thoughts about this. But one thought I had was, wait, we already have people going to the Regenerative Project Incubator who get advice about their projects and help them improve their projects. Like you may recall earlier this year when Benji Ross had no idea how to create his budget and couldn't do a good job of describing himself. And Diogo was the same way. Diogo of Agroforest DAO, which is one of the projects we're funding, horrible budget. His budget was horrible. He needed Gail to help him create a budget before we could give him money from the ER fund. Well, Diogo is now benefiting from what we're doing at this moment because his is one of the projects we're inviting people to support. And imagine if we have, let's just use some numbers to start. Say after next week, this Gitcoin round, maybe we've gotten 30 people in ER to have a MetaMask wallet and a GitHub account. And we've shown them how to do this, 30 people. And maybe we have 10 projects that we've collaborated with in some way, like Sev, like Diogo, like Kath and Tyler and Justin. People have these projects that are aligned with us. And in the next 2.5 months, we focus on a couple of really simple activities. We have a small group of people who are available at any time to help someone set up a MetaMask wallet and a GitHub account where they practice donating to the Gitcoin grants. Because you can donate to them outside of the funding round, you just don't get the funding, you don't get the matching funds. But we teach them how and create a list of them. And at the same time, we strengthen the governance and the alliance among these 15 or these 10 or 15 projects. And with the project incubator or somewhere else, I don't know where we do it, there's a set of us that learn how to on-ramp projects. So One Earth Conservation wants to do a Gitcoin grant as part of this. Well, in 2.5 months, all we need from you is a grant, a Gitcoin. Well, now that Tyler's helped me do it, Tyler can help you do it. And then, but getting a grant on there and no one supports it doesn't do you any good. But if you connect it to what we're doing with OSA and what we're doing with these other projects, then you will actually build a relationship where at the time we start, we deploy people to fund Earth Regenerators and bioregional projects so that your project is going to benefit from the grant funding round. See, this is the DAO. Why are we calling it a DAO? Because it's decentralized, autonomous, and it's organizing, but it's not just for the 2 weeks. And by the way I see this is what we're building right now is core organizational capacity to create a planetary network of bioregional learning centers. Because just as you and I talked about doing this in Nicaragua, well, what if you create a Gitcoin Nicaragua project for the next funding round, and we help fund OSA and Nicaragua between now and then, including the people who come from ReFi Barichara that are creating tools for Barichara that could redeploy them to Nicaragua. So you're not just getting money. Money is interesting, but it's not as powerful as what if we send Seb and Sam to spend a month with you to define ecological assets and map value flows for local economic development, and we leverage the funding they get. So you didn't need to pay them. They come for free because we use Gitcoin to give them money. You see what I'm getting at? And then eventually we build our own version of Gitcoin, our own liquidity pools. Because by the way, there's a whole level of what we're doing for ReFi Barichara. At the end of ReFi Barichara, we want a hollow point established. Yes, I'm looking at you, Stephen. We want to create a validator server for regen tokens with the 500,000 regen tokens we're getting from Regen Foundation. And we want to find 32 Ethereum tokens, which will allow us to create an Ethereum validator so that we can create our own liquidity pools, which, by the way, liquidity pool means what we're doing with Gitcoin right now with the matching funds, we can reproduce that with these other funding sources. So Gail, for you, you know, we talked about taking 500,000 regen tokens, staking them with a validator and using the staking returns to fund the ER fund. That's what we're talking about, just bigger. Is that we get
Yeah,
people to pull in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly interested. I only understood maybe about half of what you said.
But that's the thing. You don't need to understand how to do any of this other stuff. We will build the infrastructure and then we'll say, come to us for a training on a Gitcoin grant. And in that training on the Gitcoin grant, we'll say, we're working with these 10 other projects and we want them to be mutually supportive so we can make the case to fund all of them at once. And then we will build up a legion of people to fund all of them at once.
So we would have to see, I'd have to get Laura Kim to buy into this, which is not easy because she understands it even less than I do. But we would need to, we work in 6 countries. We need to pick one place, I'm assuming, whether it's Nicaragua, Honduras, or somewhere else, where the people there will also buy into this, which is also not going to be simple because they don't understand it either. So there's a lot of steps to. So I don't know if there could be a way. Maybe we need to create another group for this.
Stephen and Tyler are about to share, but I just want to say after this call, I'm walking over to Margarita's house, and I'm going to teach Margarita how to set up a MetaMask wallet and a GitHub account. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with a construction worker named Jose that I'm friends with because I saw him on my doorstep this morning, and I'm going to teach him how to set up a MetaMask wallet and GitHub account. And then tomorrow with Natalia, who's our powerhouse super organizer here for the Territorial Foundation, I'm going to train her to do this. So our Colombian Barichara people are about to do it. Some of them don't speak English. And
yeah, no, I'm going to get trained by Penny on Monday.
yeah, so just so you know, this is the cultural scaffolding. Okay. We got to build this cultural scaffolding all the way to on the ground. So Stephen and then Tyler.
So Gail, I feel your pain around that money could go somewhere other than buying the Constitution. What I want you to know is that that money was, that the ability to bring that much money together was enabled by crypto, but it was the relationships that made that happen. You have relationships, you have a story. It's a matter of spreading that out and then having a network to share that story so people go, oh, wow, this is really cool. Someone said, hey, let's save the Constitution, or in the example Chad gave, saving the land. Someone said, hey, let's do this. And then they had a tool with which people could do that. That's what made it easy. But if you have a network of, network of a few people who want to save parrots or whatever for anyone else, get those people interested in, we have a way to raise money, but don't worry about the rest of it. Like, would the other people in your group really be resistant to a way to raise money if your hand was held and said, we can give you $42,000, but you have to be willing to tell your story to a bunch of crypto folks? You don't have to know how to do all of that stuff. You just need to know how to tell your story, and then be willing to tell it to people who will use the tools to bring their friends. And that's what Joe's demonstrating, is he's going and talking to one person. That person, it might be a long-term investment. That person might not invest to the next round, but now they know. Now they're not afraid of it anymore. I mean, I realizing I'm saying that in part because I hated this stuff. I've set up I've done all this crypto stuff. It was only by kind of going through it and having somebody give me money so I didn't have to deal with how do I fund it. There's other layers I could tell you where I'm stopped, but I took the first step. I'm no longer afraid of it. I'm cautious, but I'm not afraid of it. So it's just a matter of that place of resistance is an excuse or a distraction. And what you want is money for your projects. So focus on, we're going to get money for your projects. And then here's a way to do it with a supportive community. The fear is like, for me, I've tried, how much, paying twice as much as I wanted to do a test crypto transaction with, for $25, I was going to have to pay $50 to test, to make sure I didn't screw up and send $1,000 into the void. Damn straight you should be afraid of that. it's focus on the relationship part, and you've got a relationship with Joe or others of us to help that next step.
Yeah,
Right.
I have a strange
Soapbox
feeling.
off.
Stephen, take that soapbox right to the town square. That's pretty awesome. I just want to say before Tyler goes that I bet, Gail, if you ask, Tyler would help you set up a Gitcoin grant. I'm just going to say that now. Tyler, on to you.
Yeah, Gail, I'm really hearing the confusion, and Joe, you're spinning out a lot of great ideas right now with, like, if we roll up enough these projects, we could create our own quadratic funding, all these things. But Gail, really just for you, I mean, the idea of DAOs and all this sort of thing is really just it's not necessary. Basically, all this is doing is it's just a crowdfunding campaign, like GoFundMe or anything else. All you're doing is you set up a profile, okay, and the grant is not really like a standard grant application. You're pretty much just writing out what you're doing, and if it's legitimate for like any sort of climate cause, then you can you can go through. It's very simple. And then basically what this quadratic funding thing is, it's just there's a big pool of money, and because there's so much money, but part of this is because there's relatively little activity on Gitcoin. Just having 50 or 60 donors, which is really not a whole lot, can end up your matching funds can be thousands of dollars, like what's happening with the Barichara one. So really, as far as different what countries this is going to and anything, I'm not sure about the specifics of your nonprofit, but it would just be your nonprofit is receiving funds through this Gitcoin grant. Then once you receive that money, then you distribute it how you see fit. And yes, then it does become just telling your story, because it is just exactly the same as any sort of other fundraising. The crypto component, is really there's really no confusion with this. As far as you can get the crypto into the grant, that's it. Then your organization has to do something with the crypto, but basically the actual fundraising effort itself is about as straightforward as you can be. But it's very easy to get confused because there's all these terms floating around, and and if you wanted help with setting one of these up, I'm sure I can help you out. I mean, you've written grants before, basically it's just writing out what your project is about, and then putting some pictures, and that's it. It's very simple. So I hope that answers some questions for you there.
Thank you, Tyler. On to you, Gail.
Yeah, I did do this for Barichara. I went in and I did that, and I have done crowdfunding. We're on Global Giving, One Earth, and so I understand how you set it up. One thing I found in Gitcoin is almost all the other projects were crypto projects. They were not land-based, and that seemed to be an issue. Maybe that has changed. I don't know.
Yeah, that is changing.
Now there's been
okay.
It's been changed.
And then the other thing is, we've had very little success with crowdfunding, traditional crowdfunding, because we don't have the big community like you have, Joe. I mean, you've got thousands of followers. We have 500 people on our email list. We have maybe a couple of thousand people on Facebook. So we don't have the reach for whatever reason. So I don't know if that's also a problem on Gitcoin, that if you don't have the same connections, then we're also going to get the same measly kind of results that we've gotten in the past. Because if that's the case, then it sounds like it's almost the same as something like Global Giving.
Yeah, that would be the case. Oh my God. Anyways, you can hear me. Yeah, that would be the case. But if this is part of like Joe's beginning network of bioregional sort of projects, then it's very easy to just leverage Joe's community, which is our community, and then you can get 50 contributors and you can have a lot more access, just by being part of this group. So yeah, without that,
Joe,
it would be tough.
Count me in, Joe. Whenever we're ready, I'll get Laura Kim to pick a project.
Yeah, the one thing I want to say before passing back to Stephen is this, that people, I think they often misunderstand my success. Like to say I'm doing this well because I have huge network is not untrue, but it's actually very misleading. Because what you'll notice is each time I do this, it's a very small number of people, or rather a very small percentage of the whole network that's doing anything. Right now, I have 63 people who have given to this Gitcoin grant. So the question isn't, how did I get to 63? It's who are they? It's who are they? And what are their relationships to each other? And how are those relationships scaffolded? You've heard me talk about cultural scaffolding a lot. And I just want to give you yet another, because I think there are probably a million different perspectives on cultural scaffolding, because it's so important, because it's so pervasive, and because we almost never think about our lives through scaffolding. But when we do, we see something. So one thing that's really important for why I'm successful, and which is going to be important for any project to be successful, is one, you spend a lot of time building relationships without much to show for it. You know, you only see me as Joe, the successful one. You didn't see the 15 years when it wasn't working. And so you might think, oh, well, Joe's just really good at building a network. So boom, he's got this network. I'm like, fucking built that network over 15 years. And I say that because that's a big secret of this. Now, another big secret of this is, how are we configuring and reconfiguring the relationships we have now? How are we retooling them to what's needed in the moment? And it turns out what's needed in the moment right now for a lot of people in the ReFi space is they are having a huge loss of faith. They're no longer believing in their own ReFi space because it's not touching the ground. And the person who saw that way ahead of anyone else was Antonio. And you guys have all heard how Antonio talks. He is as ReFi crypto tech guy as you can imagine. You know, Gail's like, what the hell are you saying? Those words aren't English, right? Like, but he saw it. And he also knew he couldn't translate it to the ground without seeing me as someone who could talk to those people, who wasn't afraid of them, who was happy to receive crypto, and was getting dirt under their fingernails. And so Antonio saw me as me as a persona could reframe ReFi. And ReFi could reframe me and what I do. And Antonio started retooling that. And he's retooling me as much as I'm retooling Gitcoin. And if you don't know that, you won't understand why I'm successful with this Gitcoin round. You'd say, oh, it's because Joe's good at crowdfunding. No, it's that Joe is co-host of ReFi Barichara with all of Antonio's connections and all of the trust Antonio's built in the last 3 years, talking about bioregional blockchains, which actually would turn most of us off. Stephen this morning was saying it turned him off. Rightly so, Stephen. And yet, among his ReFi friends, it wasn't turning them off. I think that Antonio could talk about bioregional blockchains with Chad, and Chad would be like, I may not use that word, but I'm not turned off, right? And so Antonio is leveraging all of his relationships from that space, many of whom are already on Gitcoin from previous rounds, and they are the ones making our Gitcoin round a success. So if you thought it was my networks, you would misunderstand how the networks are blending. It's my networks together with Antonio's in the moment of birthing ReFi Barichara, in the moment of birthing Barichara Ecoversity, in the moment, you get the idea. We have to know how to read the moment. And the thing is, it's never the case that one person reads the moment alone. Antonio and I started reading the moment together. You all should know this. The very first person to give me a digital wallet was Antonio in December. When I went on Twitter and said, would anyone help me set up a digital wallet to receive crypto? 2 things happened. Antonio helped me set up a Kepler wallet and gave me some money. And Gregory Landaway gave me some regen tokens because I'd set up a crypto wallet. I'd set up a Kepler wallet. And then both of them started telling all their friends, hey, everyone, Joe, this amazing regenerative person on the ground will receive your crypto. And they all started talking about Joe as the poster child of crypto. I'd only had my wallet for a week. And just a secret between all of us here, all of the crypto that's been given to me is still right here. I have not figured out how to give it to someone to use it yet. So what am I doing for crypto? I'm weaving strategic alliances around a powerful emergent story, which is what the DAO is becoming. It's the embodiment of that story. And so you'd misunderstand what I'm doing with the Gitcoin round if you simply thought Joe's good at crowdfunding. you'd misunderstand. So as we build this collaborative infrastructure, we fold each other in to each other's networks. I might get 5 new Gitcoin supporters from Gail's alumni of donors for One Earth Conservation in the next funding round. And then I might bring 50 crypto people to support Gail in the next funding round. We're folding our networks together with scaffolding. The scaffolding is why it's possible. And so you see the scaffolding here is narrative, it's historic, it's developmental, it's cross-network, it's platform dependent. You do it differently in Gitcoin than you would on Facebook. And we're doing it all in the moment, in a very powerful moment. And what we want to build is infrastructure to repeat this 3 months from now. So that by 3 months from now, whether it's Ecuador or Nicaragua or Honduras, we are actually driving the matching funds to One Earth Conservation and to OSA, who isn't even here on this call with us, and to, I know Paula's in another part of Colombia. Maybe it should be there. And by the way, I remember the fair co-op idea, Guy. What are we doing for you? How do we fold this into these networks? We've got to figure out how to collaborate across networks. That's the key to all of this. And we're using Gitcoin right now as a little sandbox with $350,000. It's tiny. It's tiny. But we're prototyping a way of collaborating and building alliances. And that collaboration and alliance forming is the DAO, which is why it's relevant to what this course is about. And by the way, what we're doing with crypto right now, you cannot do with fiat right now. What we're doing with Gitcoin, you cannot do with fiat right now. All of the infrastructure exists, except people think differently about crypto than they do about money. They still think of crypto money as a game, and they're playing games in ways that if you try to find $350,000 worth of institutional investors to play this game with fiat money, you would not find them. You would not find them. But the people in Regen and the people like them that are already prototyping very different models of how to use money and very different models of how to do governance are willing to put their crypto money on the line to play this game. And Gitcoin exists as a crypto space on purpose. It's not an accident that the people who made money in crypto are going to play governance games with crypto. But the people with fiat money are freaking out as markets do crazy shit, and they would not put fiat money into this game right now. Which is why I'm gifting Ethereum to people so they can play the game. Because it's a game. We're just learning how. All right, so I've been on my soapbox, Stephen, back to you.
Thank you. I'll take the soapbox and I'll stand on it again. Well, that's a good point, Gail. Like, it was easier for me to play because it still occurs as monopoly money. Right? If Joe gave me some money, I can play with it. I would happen to it, but in the background, I know it's going to benefit people. Well, what I first raised my hand for, I think, was thinking, Gail, in your question, or you have a small group, and how are you going to raise any money through this? There's a project that last I saw called Hilo, which is software for community organization. It could be something perfect for the Earth Regenerators community, perhaps even to replace Mighty Networks, but just as an example of what that kind of software is. As of yesterday, they still had no donors 6 days in. And
On Gitcoin,
I don't know what
they have a Gitcoin grant. Yeah.
they have no donors on the Gitcoin platform. So it's like, it's breaking my heart, because I know, I just, like, in my heart, I want to support them and I am going to make them a donation, but because of the way this funding works, they're not going to do very well. Like, what I give them $1, that may be all they get. I don't know, fully understand. I'll get to see how that works. But I've now identified them as a group that I want to make sure that they get folded into this network that Joe's talking about to support them. So same thing with your projects. It's like, you may not get a lot of money the first round, but you'll get attention if people are talking about it. So it's just an example of how something like someone in your kind of position is impacting someone else. Again, just for you to point towards the possibilities. And then there's something that I feel, I've tweeted about this occasionally on Twitter, and I really feel in this conversation, compelled to speak about. Blockchain, and by virtue, from where I sit, blockchain and by virtue of the relationship DAOs, focus on trying to overcome the flaws of human interaction through computational mathematics is law. Okay, and for me, that's what had my whole body and being cringe when I first heard about blockchain. And it's where I cringe around DAOs, because it strips out humanity in order to overcompensate for our human flaws. Now, that's because it's the only solution that they are able to see. So I've had to work through my own issues with that in order to be able to be here playing this game now. I mean, it takes someone like Joe and what he's been doing for that resistance to break down. So I would assert that resistance is what a lot of people feel. It's different, it's new, and there's a dehumanizing aspect in that. Blockchain is called trustless. I don't want to engage without trust. I'm all about trust, but it's the way part of it's the way it's presented, part of it's the system. Joe is using trust to be able to work with these tools that are designed from trust, that are designed to take out the flaws. We have an opportunity to overcome those flaws of humans, like to build trust and relationship again, and then use blockchain or other technologies for what they were designed for. It's the places where we can't trust or we want to automate the trustable aspects. So that's just my soapbox in terms of some of the resistance to blockchain is what I think is underlying the trying to overcome lack of trust with automation and machinery, when what we really are craving is more trust.
Thank you, Stephen. We've got 5 minutes left, so I just wanted to invite Gail, and then we can do a closing. So Gail, on to you.
Yeah, I'll just try to keep it quick, but I do have some experience working in seeds, and I went through an entire process with them. I got a wallet, I got seeds, I did a proposal. My proposal took a long time, but it passed, and then I stopped being involved because absolutely nothing was happening. And I was like, okay, I spent all this time and effort, and nothing came of it. So that left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth about crypto. So that kind of explains a little bit where I'm at as well. But this has been great. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, I just want to say, for what Gail is saying and what Stephen just said, that this is actually a general phenomenon, not just any one of these places. Gail, the problem you had was not with crypto, it was with seeds. I know about the seeds community. There are wonderful people in the seeds community, but as a community, they're trying to build an economy in their minds and then hoping that somehow the real world connects to it. And it's mostly not going to ever happen. And so what we need to do, that is exactly what we do in Earth Regenerators, at least what I do, and actually I think a lot of the frustration in Earth Regenerators is people think it's going to be something like what I do, and it turns out not to be. Because people spend 6 months talking without ever doing anything, and they get frustrated about all of that waste and process. Whereas I'm just like, 2 minutes later, the world's changed because I've done something in the world. And actually, most of the problems people have with me is they don't understand what it's like to be around a truly emergent human being. I frustrate the hell out of people. Chad saw some of that confusion here in Barichara when people were here not understanding what I was doing. And then I just basically decided not to explain it because I knew better after all of my years of experience. That trying to explain it pretty much 100% of the time makes it worse. It feeds misperceptions. And so I just chose not to feed Wetiko. But what I wanted to say is this, that if we don't start from a place of embodied reality, we don't get to a place of embodied reality. And so I went to Gitcoin with a real landscape, with a real community, with many different amazing projects in Barichara, and with an online community of people who actually know each other with real relationships with each other. And through that, we are manifesting a pooling of money that will come back to Barichara, to the real people here, to these real projects, to do real work. If we didn't start from embodiment and come directly back to embodiment, we'd just be masturbating. We'd just be like playing a stupid game. It would be completely pointless yet again. But here we are with like $13,000 raised in a week for the people of Barichara to do real things on the ground. And this difference is so big. I mean, that's why people are actually giving money. It's not because Joe's a good spinster and he's a good storyteller. It's that I'm a good story doer. And when I see people telling good stories that aren't manifesting, my key question is, what are your relationships to the people around you? Because if you change the way you relate to people into a mode of doing together in an embodied way, it just feels so different. Look at us in the last hour, all of this learning we're doing is embedded in a context of real world change if we choose to step into it. And it means this conversation isn't just an intellectual exercise. We can actually do something with it. So on to Guy, and then I think we should close. But Guy, on to you.
Yes, I've got another call, so I'll have to go now. But I just wanted to say that I had a meeting this morning with Mark Wynn from Seeds, and he was just saying exactly what you were saying, Joe, that it's too much, like trying to design the whole thing before actually doing it. And he's got like a project actually on the ground in Guernsey, that's an island in the UK. And he's doing like very hands-on things like regenerative things. And so I think he's going to be, if people are really listening to him, because I think there is a frustration in Seeds with like just going round and round and trying to design the whole thing before actually doing anything. He's saying don't bother with any of that. What he actually said was, you just have to learn how to be a starling in a flock. So that basically, that brings it back to what you were saying about the ants. Like, how do ants coordinate? Just a very simple heuristic. And that's what he is basically saying we need to do in Seeds. Just start doing it, start regenerating stuff on the ground. And then we can kind of weave in the crypto tools as necessary. So, yeah.
Can I get an amen? So in closing, you know, I know Antonio wanted to talk about DAOs and doing DAOs. I just love that he named it that. And I just told you in Earth Regenerators, we're doing a DAO. And in the Gitcoin funding round, we're doing a DAO. And so now you can feel that these weird words they actually create a mental separation. When in truth, it's the embodied doing that matters, but doing in a decentralized, autonomous way. How can, like Guy and I have attempted to collaborate for years in various moments. And here we are collaborating again. We're decentralized and relatively autonomous. He does his thing, I do my thing. We know and trust each other. And every now and then we come into coherence of doing something. So he and I, as an interpersonal human relationship, we are a DAO. And so just recognizing that that's all that it means. You apply it all over the place. And now back to Gitcoin, just know that we're doing this and play in whatever ways make sense. And whenever it makes sense, and know that I'm doing my part to scaffold this as we go. So it's not just 2 months of successful fundraising for Barichara. I'm trying to scaffold these alliances because I know Barichara succeeds and everything else fails means everything fails, including Barichara. We have to have a planetary network of bioregional projects. I get that. So I'm never thinking of only one project, ever. I'm always thinking about how to weave into the next scale that's needed. And so here we are doing it, including with this course. And so thank you, everyone. Thank you for letting me just step into Antonio's place for the day. I feel like the Gitcoin funding round is sort of what this course is trying to be. And actually we'll learn everything. I think every one of us signed up for this course to do what we're actually practicing in the Gitcoin round. So Gail, I'm glad you have a meeting with Penny. There's Penny. For her to set you up in it and play the game with us. So thank you, everyone. And Gail.
Joe, do you have a minute before you go? I won't take much time.
Yeah, I just have a minute because I have to go meet with, I'm going to go meet with Margarita to set up her MetaMask wallet.
Okay, just 1 minute, and everyone else you can go unless you want to eavesdrop on.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.